The Last Transmission. A sci-fi story. The signal was dying again. Static clawed at the edges of the transmission, a rasping whisper that rose and fell like breathing. Elias pressed the battered headphones tighter against his ears, knuckles white, breath held. The ruined broadcast tower groaned in the wind above him, its skeletal frame swaying like a drunk trying to stay upright. Dinates, 3.9.4. Repeat, 3.9. Then a long, low moan of interference swallowed the rest. Elias exhaled, fogging the cracked visor of his respirator. He wiped it with the back of his glove and leaned closer to the console. The machine was older than he was, older than the collapse itself. A pre-silence relic with analog dials and a cathode screen that flickered like a dying candle. He'd scavenged half its parts from abandoned arcology maintenance rooms, the other half from forgotten bunkers buried under ash. But it worked. It still worked. And the signal was real. He adjusted the frequency wheel with careful, reverent precision. The static thinned. The faint tone pulsed. Then the voice returned, warped, distant, but unmistakably human. Point 7. Survivors. Repeat. Survivors. Elias froze. There it was again. That word. The one he'd replayed 1,000 times in his head. The one that kept him alive when the city tried to kill him. Survivors. He swallowed hard and forced himself to breathe. The tower platform creaked beneath him, metal fatigued by decades of acid rain and ash storms. Far below, the megacity sprawled in broken silence. A labyrinth of collapsed highways, gutted skyscrapers, and streets choked with mutated vegetation. The horizon glowed faintly with geothermal haze, the only light left in a world without satellites, without power grids, without stars. He checked the coordinates again. 39.4. Latitude. The rest was buried in distortion, but he'd triangulated enough to know the direction. Northeast, across the dead belt, through the arcology ruins. A week's journey if nothing hunted him. He shut down the console, slung his pack over his shoulder, and began the climb down the tower's rusted ladder. The wind howled through the metal ribs, carrying the distant groan of shifting structures. The city never slept. It only decayed loudly. Halfway down, he paused, listened. Something moved in the streets below. Not wind, not debris, something alive. He descended the rest of the way in silence, boots landing softly on the cracked pavement. The air tasted metallic through his respirator. He scanned the shadows between the buildings, jagged silhouettes of glassless windows and collapsed facades. A shape darted behind a burned-out vehicle. Elias tightened his grip on his makeshift spear, a carbon fiber hiking pole tipped with a sharpened scrap of steel. He didn't call out. Anything that understood language was either long dead or worse. He waited. The shape didn't reappear. Good. He didn't have time for detours. He set off toward the highway overpass, boots crunching through layers of ash. The sky above was a permanent bruise-colored haze, thick enough to blot out the sun. Only the faint glow of geothermal vents far to the south gave any sense of direction. He walked quickly, head down, ears tuned to the city's breathing. The signal repeated in his mind like a heartbeat. Survivors. By midday, Elias reached the old transit interchange, a sprawling concrete skeleton where maglev lines once converged. Now it was a graveyard of twisted rails and collapsed platforms. Vines as thick as his arms snaked through the ruins, their bioluminescent tips glowing faintly in the gloom. He kept his distance. The vines reacted to heat. He skirted the edge of the interchange, stepping over shattered glass and rusted metal. A toppled maglev car lay on its side, half buried in ash. Its windows were blown out, its interior gutted by scavengers long before him. He paused at the open doorway. Something had nested inside. He could see the shredded remains of fabric, bones arranged in a spiral pattern, and a faint chemical smell that made his eyes water. He backed away slowly. The mutated fauna of the dead belt didn't tolerate trespassers. He continued northeast, following the cracked remnants of the highway. The asphalt had buckled into jagged waves, forcing him to climb over ridges and slide down into fissures. The silence pressed in on him, broken only by the distant rumble of shifting megastructures. Hours passed. The city changed. The buildings grew taller, denser, more intact, the outer ring of the arcology zone. These structures had been designed to withstand earthquakes, storms, even war, but not abandonment. Not the slow, relentless decay of a world without maintenance. Elias approached a massive tower whose base had collapsed inward, creating a cavernous opening. He hesitated. The shortest route cut through the arcology interior. The safest route went around, adding 2 days to his journey. He checked the coordinates scribbled on his wrist slate. 39.4. He didn't have 2 days. He stepped inside. The interior of the arcology was a cathedral of shadows. His headlamp cut a narrow beam through the darkness, illuminating dust motes and hanging cables. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of mold and old plastic. He moved carefully, avoiding loose debris. The floor sloped downward, leading deeper into the structure. He passed abandoned living pods, their doors hanging open like gaping mouths. Some were empty. Others still held the remnants of lives interrupted. Overturned furniture, scattered belongings, skeletal remains curled in corners. He tried not to look at the bones. He'd seen enough of them. A faint sound echoed through the corridor. A drip, then another. Water. He followed the sound to a collapsed section where a broken pipe leaked into a shallow pool. He knelt, filtered a handful through his portable purifier, and drank. The water tasted metallic but clean enough. As he stood, he heard another sound. A whisper. He froze. Not water. Not wind. A voice. Elias. His blood ran cold. He swung his headlamp toward the darkness. The beam illuminated only dust and broken walls. Elias. The voice was soft, familiar, impossible. He took a step back. No, he whispered. Not real. The arcology played tricks on the mind. Echoes. Resonance. The way sound traveled through hollow megastructures could mimic speech. He forced himself to breathe. Then the voice spoke again, clearer this time. Help me. His chest tightened. It was his sister's voice. But she had died years ago. He shut off his headlamp, plunging himself into darkness. The voice stopped instantly. Silence. He waited, heart pounding. Nothing. He turned the lamp back on. Still nothing. He exhaled shakily and continued deeper into the arcology, refusing to look back. By nightfall, he reached the central atrium, a vast open space where artificial gardens once thrived under simulated sunlight. Now it was a jungle of mutated flora, vines crawling up the walls, leaves glowing with eerie blue light. He stayed on the upper walkway, avoiding the overgrowth below. The plants reacted to movement. He'd seen what they did to animals. As he crossed the walkway, his radio crackled. He froze. The device hadn't made a sound in hours. He lifted it to his ear. Static. Then a faint pulse. Dinates 39.4. The same signal, but distorted differently this time, as if the voice were being stretched, pulled apart. Elias. He stiffened. That wasn't part of the original transmission. Come to us. His breath caught. The voice was wrong. Too smooth. Too calm. Too deliberate. Not a broadcast. A response. He lowered the radio slowly. Someone, or something, was listening, and it knew his name. He backed away from the railing, scanning the atrium. The glowing plants swayed gently, though there was no wind. The vines on the far wall twitched, curling toward him. He turned and ran. He didn't stop until he reached the far exit of the arcology. Lungs burning, legs trembling. He burst into the open air, collapsing against a cracked support pillar. The sky above was darker now, the geothermal glow fading as night settled. He checked his radio again. Silent. He checked the coordinates. 39.4. Still northeast. He forced himself to stand. He had to keep moving. The arcology behind him groaned, metal shifting like a living thing. He didn't look back. He followed the remnants of the elevated highway, its surface fractured but passable. The night air was colder, carrying the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. Some sounded almost human. He ignored them. Hours passed. The city thinned, giving way to the dead belt, a vast expanse of cracked earth and skeletal structures. The ground here was unstable, riddled with sinkholes and geothermal vents. The air shimmered with heat in some places, froze in others. He walked carefully, testing each step. The radio crackled again. He stopped. Elias! The voice was closer now. Too close. You're almost here. His skin crawled. He turned in a slow circle, scanning the darkness. Nothing. Don't be afraid. He gripped his spear tighter. Stop, he whispered. You're not real. The voice laughed softly. We are real. He shut off the radio. The silence that followed was worse. By dawn, he reached the outskirts of the coordinate zone, a cluster of collapsed research domes half buried in ash. Their transparent shells were cracked, their interiors overgrown with pale, spindly vegetation. He approached cautiously. The air felt wrong here, thicker, charged with static. His skin prickled beneath his clothes. He checked the coordinates again. 39.4. He was close. He stepped through the shattered entrance of the largest dome. The interior was dim, lit only by the faint glow of bioluminescent plants. The air smelled of ozone and decay. In the center of the dome stood a radio tower, smaller than the one he'd used, but intact. Its lights flickered weakly, powered by a generator that hummed with unnatural steadiness. Elias approached slowly. The generator was pre-collapse tech. It shouldn't still be running. He reached out and touched the tower's metal frame. Warm. Too warm. The radio on his belt crackled violently. He lifted it with trembling hands. Static. Then a voice. His voice. Elias. Welcome. He staggered back. No, he whispered. No, no, no. The tower lights brightened. The static deepened. We've been waiting. He turned to run. The dome entrance sealed shut behind him with a metallic clang. He spun, heart hammering. The plants around the dome rustled, their glowing tendrils lifting like antennae. The radio spoke again. Dozens of voices layered together, human and not. Don't leave, Elias. Stay, stay, stay. He backed away until he hit the tower. The lights pulsed. The voices grew louder. We need you. He squeezed his eyes shut. This wasn't a rescue signal. It wasn't survivors. It was something else. Something that had learned to speak. Something that had been calling him here. He opened his eyes. The tower lights flared white. The voices whispered in unison. Join us. The tower's white glare burned through Elias's eyelids. He shielded his face, stumbling backward until his boots hit the curved wall of the dome. The air vibrated, a low, resonant hum that made his teeth ache. The voices layered through the static again. Join us, Elias. We are here. He forced his eyes open. The tower was changing. Its metal frame rippled like liquid mercury, bending and twisting into new shapes. The cables writhed like tendrils. The generator's hum deepened into a pulse, rhythmic, biological. The radio on his belt vibrated violently. He ripped it off and threw it to the ground. It didn't break. It didn't even scratch. Instead, it spoke in a perfect imitation of his own voice. Don't run. He backed away, breath ragged. What are you? He whispered. The tower answered. Not with words, with movement. The metal elongated, forming a vaguely humanoid silhouette. Limbs, a head, a torso, but wrong. Too smooth, too fluid, as if it were sculpting itself from memory, but the memory wasn't human. We are signal, the voices said. We are echo. We are what remains. The figure stepped toward him, its feet leaving no prints on the floor. Elias raised his spear. Stay back. The figure tilted its head, mimicking curiosity. You came to us? You heard us? You followed. That wasn't you, Elias said. That was a distress call. Survivors. The figure's surface rippled. We learned the word. Survivors? You responded. His stomach twisted. You lured me. We called. You answered. Now you complete us. The vines around the dome lifted, glowing brighter. Their tips pointed toward him like sensors. Elias tightened his grip on the spear. I'm not joining anything. The figure extended an arm, a long, tapering limb that split into multiple tendrils. You already have. The tendrils shot forward. Elias dove aside, rolling across the floor. The tendrils struck the ground where he'd stood, melting the metal surface with a hiss. He scrambled to his feet and sprinted toward the sealed entrance. He slammed his shoulder against it. Solid. Immovable. He turned. The figure was gliding toward him. You cannot leave. We need voice. We need mind. He scanned the dome desperately. The generator. If he could disable it, maybe the tower would collapse. He sprinted toward it. The figure reacted instantly, its tendrils lashing out. One grazed his arm, slicing through his jacket and burning the skin beneath. He cried out but kept running. He reached the generator, a humming, pulsating mass of pre-collapse tech fused with something organic. Cables pulsed like veins. He raised his spear and drove it into the housing. Sparks exploded. The hum faltered. The figure shrieked, a sound like metal tearing and voices screaming in unison. Elias pulled the spear free and struck again. The generator convulsed. The lights flickered. The vines recoiled. The figure staggered, its form destabilizing. Stop! Elias, stop! He struck a third time. The generator ruptured, spewing smoke and molten metal. The tower convulsed violently, its limbs collapsing inward. The dome lights died. Silence. Then, a soft click. The entrance unlocked. Elias didn't hesitate. He ran. He burst into the cold morning air, coughing, eyes watering from the smoke. Behind him, the dome flickered with intermittent light, the tower struggling to reconstitute itself. He didn't look back. He sprinted across the cracked earth, lungs burning, legs shaking. The dead belt stretched endlessly before him, shimmering with heat and ash. He didn't stop until the dome was a distant silhouette. He collapsed behind a fallen support beam, gasping for breath. The radio on his belt crackled. He froze. He had thrown it away. Slowly, he reached for his pack. The radio was inside. He hadn't put it there. He lifted it with trembling hands. Static. Then a whisper. Elias! He hurled it as far as he could. It landed in the ash, went silent, then spoke again. Louder. You cannot run. He stood and backed away. The radio's casing split open. Something inside pulsed. A small, metallic organism, its surface rippling like the towers. It unfolded tiny limbs and began crawling toward him. Elias turned and ran. By midday, he reached the outskirts of the megacity again, the skeletal remains of old industrial zones. The air was thick with dust, the sky a dull gray bruise. He ducked into an abandoned maintenance tunnel, barricading the entrance with debris. He slumped against the wall, exhausted. His arm throbbed where the tendril had grazed him. The skin was discolored, veins darkened. He touched it. Pain shot up to his shoulder. He clenched his teeth. He needed to rest. He closed his eyes. For a moment, there was only silence. Then a whisper, not from a radio, from inside his head. Elias! His eyes snapped open. No, he whispered. You're not here. We are signal. You touched us. We touched you. He pressed his hands to his temples. Get out of my head. We are not in your head. You are in ours. He forced himself to breathe. You're dying, he said. The generator is gone. The tower is collapsing. The voice chuckled, a sound like static laughing. We are not one tower. Not one place. We are many. We are everywhere the signal has touched. His blood ran cold. How many? Enough. He stood, heart pounding. He had to keep moving. He had to warn someone. But there was no one left. No satellites. No networks. No cities. Only ruins. And the signal. "Come back," the voice whispered. "We can help you. We can fix your arm." He ignored it and pushed deeper into the tunnel. Night fell quickly. He emerged from the tunnel into the lower levels of the megacity, a maze of collapsed infrastructure and flooded corridors. The bioluminescent plants here glowed faintly, casting eerie shadows. He moved quietly, avoiding the larger growths. His arm worsened. The veins had turned black, branching like cracks in porcelain. His fingers tingled. His vision blurred at the edges. "We can save you," the voice whispered. "You are becoming like us." He stumbled. "No," he muttered. "I'm not." "You feel it? The connection? The resonance?" He pressed on. He reached an old transit hub, a cavernous space filled with rusted vehicles and stagnant water. The ceiling had partially collapsed, letting in a faint glow from the geothermal haze outside. He climbed onto an overturned transport car and sat, breathing heavily. The voice softened. "You are alone, Elias. But you don't have to be." He closed his eyes. For a moment he imagined it, not being alone, not wandering ruins, not listening to silence. A community, a voice, a purpose. "We can give you all of that." He shook his head. "You're not real. We are more real than anything left in this world." He opened his eyes. The shadows in the hub shifted. Something moved. He froze. A figure stepped into the faint light. Human. A woman. Her clothes were ragged, her face gaunt, but her eyes were sharp. She raised a hand. "Don't move," she said. Elias stared. "You're alive." She nodded slowly. "Who are you?" he asked. She hesitated. Then she said, "I'm what you were hoping to find." Her name was Mara. She led him through a series of hidden passages beneath the transit hub, eventually reaching a reinforced shelter lit by salvaged lamps. Inside were supplies, tools, and a small group of survivors, 5 in total. Elias stared at them, overwhelmed. "You're real," he whispered. Mara nodded. "We've been hiding from the signal for years." Elias sank onto a crate. "You know about it. We've lost people to it," she said. "It mimics voices, memories, anything to lure you in." He swallowed. "It touched me," he said quietly. "In the dome." Mara's expression darkened. "Show me." He rolled up his sleeve. The blackened veins pulsed faintly. The survivors exchanged uneasy glances. Mara knelt beside him. "It's inside you," she said, "but not fully integrated. Can you remove it?" She hesitated. "We can try." The voice in his head hissed. "They will kill you. They fear you." He ignored it. Mara stood. "Come with me." She led him to a small medical room. Old equipment, makeshift tools, a surgical table. "Lie down," she said. He did. She strapped his arm to the table. "This will hurt." He nodded. She injected a numbing agent. The voice screamed, "Stop, Elias, stop. She is lying. She will cut you apart." Mara picked up a scalpel. "Hold still." She made the first incision. Elias gasped. Black fluid seeped from the wound. Thick, metallic, shimmering. Mara recoiled. "It's adapting," she said. "Trying to bond with your nervous system." The voice shrieked. "We can save you." "She cannot." Elias clenched his teeth. "Keep going." Mara cut deeper. The fluid writhed. Then, something moved beneath his skin. A small metallic organism pushed upward, trying to escape. Mara grabbed forceps. "Hold him down." 2 survivors rushed in, pinning Elias to the table. Mara clamped the forceps around the organism. It screeched, a sound like tearing metal. She pulled. The organism resisted, tendrils anchoring into Elias's veins. He screamed. The voice roared in his mind. "Elias, don't leave us. Don't leave." Mara yanked hard. The organism tore free. Elias convulsed. The world went white. He woke hours later. His arm was bandaged. The black veins were gone. Mara sat beside him. "You're clear," she said. "For now." He exhaled shakily. "Thank you." She nodded. "We need to move," she said. "The signal knows where you are. It will come." He sat up. "Where do we go?" She hesitated. "There's a place," she said. "Far north. A bunker. Shielded. We think it's where the signal originated." Elias stiffened. "You want to destroy it?" She nodded. "We can't survive otherwise." He stood slowly. "Then let's finish this." The voice whispered faintly. Distant now, but still there. "Elias, don't do this." He ignored it. For the first time in years, he wasn't alone. And he had a purpose. The journey north took weeks. The signal followed them, whispering through broken speakers, flickering through old screens, vibrating through metal structures. But it never fully reached him again. Not after the extraction. The survivors grew closer. Shared stories. Shared hope. Elias felt something he hadn't felt in years. Belonging. When they finally reached the bunker, a massive underground facility sealed behind blast doors, the signal was deafening. "Elias, come home." Mara placed a hand on his shoulder. "Ready?" He nodded. They opened the doors. Inside was a vast chamber filled with towers, dozens of them, all pulsing with the same unnatural light. The origin. The hive. The signal screamed. "Elias, we made you. We called you. You are ours." He raised his spear. "No," he said. "I'm not." Mara activated the EMP charges. The towers convulsed. The light died. The voices fell silent. For the first time since the satellites fell, the world was quiet. Elias exhaled. Mara smiled faintly. "It's over." He wasn't sure. But for now, there was hope. Real hope. Not a signal. Not an echo. Not a mimicry. Human hope. And he would follow it wherever it led. This is the end of the sci-fi story, The Last Transmission. Leave a like if you enjoyed the story, and subscribe for more sci-fi stories. Thanks for listening.